think there's something really exciting about the artist as charlatan, you know, the bullshitter. I think that's something that we do that can that has a kind of radical edginess that people aren't sure if it's a joke or not. And you know, on the one hand, I think of course this is all deadly serious and it's my life. I've spent my whole life doing it, but I'm interested in this possibility that the whole thing is just nothing. This is a brand new painting based on a small painting I did in Majorca this September. And so this is called Side Street in Majorca. And one of the things that struck me there were these older women, somewhat shapeless older women wearing these muumuus. And the muumuus often had the most dramatic geometric abstraction, just explosive patterning. And I thought there was this exciting kind of moving abstract paintings in the landscape, and yet there was something a little bit sad about them. So I paired one of these women walking into the landscape with this man wearing a Betty Boop mask. And there's something I liked about this Betty Boop man combination. It's sort of like layering imagery without it being sort of postmodern image sandwich. So his eyes double as her eyes, plus they're of different race, and there's something about a little bit of cross-dressing, a little bit of interracial thematic that's, I think, conjured by this image. I oftentimes think of figures that face into the painting, like this woman in our muumuu. I think in some ways, because she has her back to us and she's moving into the space of the painting, that she is in some ways a spectator surrogate. That when we look into the painting, she echoes this looking in and carries it thematically into the picture. Even though she in a way is a walking painting, she carries the painting on her, on her body. A picture of a guy running into the landscape. He's running into the light, and I think of him as somehow being annihilated by the light. He is almost in a kind of X-ray state, and barely existing. And so the landscape is kind of swooping around him. I think that in some ways I enjoy toying with, I guess, what we call the pathetic fallacy. The idea that the landscape reflects inner states, and so these newest landscapes are certainly tied to some inner state, sometimes of the protagonist, or sometimes just of the artist as protagonist. Recently I've been trying to introduce paint actions, a sense of contingency in the making of it, and I'm still thinking out. I haven't really fully understood what its iconographic character is, what it means. But because I've admired it so much in other artists, I've been testing it, seeing how it works. And in this painting, I think it's a way to capture some notion of weather, I guess, emotional weather. The sense that it could change, that it just happened somehow, that even though it reflects an act of will, of course, a big brushstroke is an exercise of the artist's, whatever it is, will to make. But at the same time, I wanted to have some degree of casualness, as though it's kind of blown in. In this case, there's this little landscape down here of blobs, and they were, for a while, the consequence of a rainbow. I had this rainbow going through the painting, and so each color in the rainbow then became a tree. So as though there was this kind of prismatic blossoming of landscape. Eventually the rainbow went away, and all we have are these thin little leftover elements that seemed in a way like the drawing elements that are making up our hero. And the only thing left of the rainbow is this landscape. So it's in a way some screwed up version of I guess the romantic sublime, that this sort of grandeur of the light will annihilate our hero as he runs toward it. So I did a show in Harlem at Triple Candy last spring called Snowman in Love. And it was an installation involving 12-foot inflatable snowmen. I had about 25 of them. I piled them up and painted on them. I organized them into little installations, mixed with paintings. And one of the things that interested me was the way the snowman could be used as to signify race. There's something about the whiteness of the snowman. So I introduced race into the show by dressing up some of the snowmen in blackface. And I thought somehow, as a white man doing a show in Harlem, that I wanted to invoke this, both these anxieties and maybe, what would we call it, subtly political material. So the theme, in a way, had to do with miscegenation. The snowman was in love, and he was in love with others, various others. Others of his own kind, others of different kinds. And I thought, well, this is interesting. Maybe in a way, there's some aspect of miscegenation which infuses all kinds of attachments, whether it's heterosexual or just other people. And this idea of otherness, that somehow that we attach to otherness variously, I wanted to elaborate in the show, Triple Candy. So this painting is related to that show. It stars this black snowman, which I think of as being connected to the Atlanta hip-hop artist Young Jeezy. Young Jeezy had the frowning snowman as his personal icon, which found its way into t-shirts and had a whole little slightly scandalous run because the snowman in that context referred to a cocaine dealer. Snowman. I actually identify with this guy here. This one's called Jeezy and his wife. And she's, you know, a little bit to the side. Maybe they're having some troubles. Hopefully they'll work it out. I started making sculpture about 10 years ago. I would go to yard sales and get ceramic figurines and embed them in paper pulp, modeling compound, and sort of like this, as a way to elaborate what I thought was some of their inner goodness, convert them into, sort of honor their kind of inherit their potential to be modern art. But part of what interested me in them was the strange itinerary of their life, that somebody designed them, some company manufactured them, seeking popularity. Somebody obviously purchased it, must have, you know, responded to the solicitations of the object, probably maybe cherished it, and then no longer loved it, gave it up. Yard sale. That's where it intersects with my life. So I like the sense of these histories that went with the object, which then become part of my content. So this is my repertory company. These are characters, most of which I've found, some of which were given to me. This one still has its tag, a lamb pulling its cargo of what? Sometimes they're sexy. This one is I think a particularly sad one. Some of them have been painted by people who are institutionalized. So there's another layer to the story. They mostly do nothing. They're just waiting for a role. So sadly, many of them have waited years, but the role will come, and they don't mind. They're patient. Sometimes they're a little more eager than maybe is appropriate, but that's okay. That's part of it. I enjoy them a lot. These are my low-maintenance pets. They all are stuffed animals that I buy at Kmart, and then I tie them up, join them together, and then coat them with a paper pulp hydrocal mixture, and then grow them basically into these shapes that we see here. Each one is a pair of the same species. These are bunnies. We've got rabbits, bunnies, goats, puppies, bears. So it's a bit of a menagerie, and I like to think of them as modern art in the tradition of Henry Moore. I like that somehow there's this story of some manufacturer deciding what they thought would be popular, usually something cute, and a designer, usually anonymous, making the thing. Somebody responds to the solicitations of the object to be cherished or loved, or maybe it was a gift. Maybe somebody subcontracted their feelings, into the kitty to share with whoever it was they gave the gift to, and then eventually it was no longer loved, no longer cherished. It ended up in the flea market. So there's this kind of weird sadness to that history. So I thought I wanted to honor that, or maybe mutilate it, or maybe honor it by mutilating it. But I never, in fact, broke them. I always just embedded them. So in the end, if it turns out they're worth more than my sculptures, well, you could just, retrieve them. In the last few months, I was invited to Will Cotton's studio. Will hires a model every week and has friends over, and we draw. So I wanted to experiment. I hadn't really drawn the figure since art school, and I wasn't sure. But immediately I realized this was a whole series of challenges. One, the depiction challenge, one to making a drawing challenge. So I decided to paint on the back of frosted mylar. I would do these abstract paintings. And sometimes I would even have a drawing there, a fragment of a drawing, maybe a tracing, so there would be shards, almost like image shards that pre-existed, so that I would have this challenge when drawing the figure to both do the dutiful, studious exercise of trying to depict her, always a her, and also collaborate with myself, trying to make a drawing, collaborate with this other self, the one who made the abstraction. And so each pose would be this game, in a way, that would involve verisimilitude, truth to the pose, and adaptation to the elements that were there already. And I found that very exciting. I like toying with the terms of sex, the way sexuality and gender are articulated in works. Is so fragile and dodgy. I love toying with identification. You don't see it so much in these. These are clearly women, but in other works, I'm interested in what's the word? The constructedness of desire, and sort of and complicating it through the terms of the painting. And I guess maybe there's something about the rhetorical clarity of pornography that interests me, that I want to kind of turn or elaborate differently in the pictures.